a usually gentle golden retriever named Rusty exploded into action. He bolted from wherever he'd been sleeping and threw himself against the front window, his hackles raised, lips pulled back in a snarl I'd never heard before. The sound he made wasn't quite a growl. It was something deeper, more desperate. A warning that came from somewhere ancient and instinctual. Some memories burn themselves into your soul so deeply that decades later you can still feel the terror crawling up your spine like ice water. This is one of those memories. The night I learned that monsters aren't just hiding under beds or in closets. Sometimes they're watching you from the darkness outside your window. I had awesome parents who let me sleep in the living room on weekend nights when I was very young because my sister was a light sleeper and I could stay up until dawn watching television. But of course, I always ended up crashing on the couch because Nick at Night's droning voices would eventually lull me into exhausted sleep. That particular night started like any other. I'd fallen asleep to the familiar glow of the TV screen, wrapped in my favorite blanket, feeling safe and content in our little house tucked away in rural Georgia. Our property was surrounded by towering pines and ancient oaks that seemed to stretch endlessly into the black void beyond our yard. During the day, those trees felt protective, like silent guardians. At night, they transformed into something else entirely. A wall of shadows, hiding secrets I never wanted to discover. I don't know what woke me. It wasn't a sound exactly, but something far more primal. An electric feeling that made every hair on my body stand on end. My eyes snapped open, and I found myself bolt upright on the couch, heart already hammering against my ribs. The TV had gone to static, casting an eerie, shifting light across the room. But it was the moonlight streaming through our front window that made my blood turn to ice. There, in the massive oak tree that dominated our front yard, was a silhouette. Not a branch or a shadow or a trick of the light. A human shape, perfectly still, positioned about 15 feet up among the gnarled branches. The pale moonlight illuminated enough detail to make my stomach drop. Broad shoulders, long limbs, and worst of all, the unmistakable shape of a head turned directly toward our house. Toward me. The figure wasn't moving, wasn't swaying with the wind like the other branches. It was perfectly, unnaturally still, as if it had been carved from the tree itself. But I knew, with the awful certainty that only comes in moments of pure terror, that it was alive and watching. That's when our family dog, a usually gentle golden retriever named Rusty, exploded into action. He bolted from wherever he'd been sleeping and threw himself against the front window, his hackles raised, lips pulled back in a snarl I'd never heard before. The sound he made wasn't quite a growl. It was something deeper, more desperate. A warning that came from somewhere ancient and instinctual. Terrified beyond rational thought, I scrambled off the couch and ran down the hallway to my parents' room. my bare feet slapping against the cold hardwood. I burst through their door, probably looking like a wild thing, with my hair disheveled and eyes wide with panic. "There's someone outside," I whispered frantically, shaking my mother's shoulder. "In the tree. There's a man in the tree." My father was awake instantly, that alert way parents wake when they sense real danger. Without a word, he grabbed his hunting rifle from the closet and headed for the door, calling for both our dogs. I watched through the window as he and the dogs disappeared into the darkness, flashlight beam cutting through the shadows like a sword. I trembled in my mother's arms, listening to the silence that seemed to press against our windows like something alive. Every creak of the house made me jump. Every whisper of wind through the trees sounded like footsteps. Minutes stretched into eternity before I heard the front door open and my father's heavy footsteps returning. "Nothing out there," he said, but I caught the edge in his voice. "Probably just shadows playing tricks, but you're sleeping in your room tonight." Despite his calm words, I noticed how he kept glancing toward the windows, how his jaw stayed tight with tension. He made a pot of coffee and began what I would later understand were patrol rounds. Walking through each room, checking locks, peering out windows with the casual air of someone who wasn't really casual at all. I retreated to my bedroom. Here I quickly filled my sister in on what had happened. She listened with wide eyes, and I could tell she believed me, which somehow made everything worse. We both lay in our beds, stiff as boards, listening to Dad's measured footsteps echo through the house every 20 minutes. Finally, after what felt like hours, the house grew quiet. Dad's rounds had stopped. The coffee maker had clicked off. Even the dogs had settled down. I was just beginning to convince myself that maybe I could sleep. Maybe the nightmare was over, when I made the mistake of looking toward my bedroom window. He was there, not in the tree this time, but standing in our backyard, close enough that I could make out details in the moonlight. He was tall, gaunt, wearing what looked like dark clothing that hung loose on his frame. His face was pale, almost luminous in the silver light, and his eyes, God, his eyes, were fixed directly on me through the glass. Our gazes met across the darkness, and in that moment, I understood that this wasn't random. This wasn't some vagrant who'd happened upon our property. This was deliberate, personal. He had come here for a reason, and that reason was watching me. Slowly, deliberately, he raised one finger to his lips in a shushing motion. The gesture was almost casual, like a teacher quieting a classroom, but the wrongness of it, the calm intimacy of it, made my skin crawl. Then, without breaking eye contact, he turned and began walking away in a perfectly straight line, moving with an odd, mechanical gait that didn't look quite human. I watched him disappear into the tree line, and only then did I realize I was sobbing. Great, gasping sobs that shook my entire body. I couldn't stop. The tears came in waves, each one carrying with it the weight of a terror I didn't have words for. I cried until my throat was raw, until my eyes burned, until exhaustion finally pulled me under. In the morning, my parents found strange footprints in the soft earth beneath both the front oak and my bedroom window. Perfect circles in the dirt, as if someone had been standing there for hours, shifting their weight from foot to foot. The local sheriff came by, took some photos, and filed a report, but nothing ever came of it. We moved away from that house 6 months later, though my parents never said it was because of that night. But I knew. I saw the way my mother's hands shook when she closed the curtains each evening. I noticed how my father started sleeping with his rifle propped against the bedside table. And sometimes, even now, decades later, I'll catch a glimpse of movement in my peripheral vision. A shadow where shadows shouldn't be. A silhouette that doesn't belong. I'll feel that same electric terror creeping up my spine. And I'll remember the night I learned that some watchers never really go away. They just learn to hide better.